Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It's been a couple of weeks since the last video. I've been very busy with a lot of other stuff. Most notably, and those of you who've watched the previous videos will know that we have a very big holiday coming up in under 3 weeks now. So yeah, I've largely been engaged with making some extra money for that holiday. The last thing we want is to be counting the pennies towards the final week of our month-long road trip in Europe. On which subject, I have some news. We have had a radical transformation of the entire holiday plan. You will remember that we were just going to go on the Magnificent Beast. I'm out today on Mr. Suzuki. But the Magnificent Beast, the Murgatroyd and I were going off on a big motorcycle camping trip across Europe. What we've decided to do now is to rip out the fold-away bed in the back of the camper van, fix an eyelet to the chassis for securing the bike, and with the aid of a motorcycle ramp, put the bike in the back of the van. So we are going to France on the Channel Tunnel still. We've rebooked the ticket to include the camper van. And what this does is two things. First of all, it stops us from having to get wet a lot. And second of all, it allows us an enormous amount of flexibility with the activities that we can do, rather than just riding from one place to another, camping and going off to explore from there. What we can actually do is we can take the kayaks as well, we can take a couple of guitars, we can take the chess set, we can take as many books as we want to be taking, and there's no issue with the Murgatroyd and her quota for underwear. We'll have plenty of space and plenty of flexibility. So that's a big development, and that basically has completely changed our planning process. We're now completely rethinking the holiday. We still have the one commitment in the middle of it on my birthday, when we'll be in the Verdon Gorge, and I'm actually looking at employing a rock climbing guide to take me up a couple of the massive rock climbs there on my birthday, but we'll see what happens with that one. So I've basically been working every day for the last couple of weeks. I'll be working pretty much every day for the next 2 weeks until we leave, and we will have plenty of holiday money and we can do what we like. So anyway, I'm now on the way to work. I'm helping out a friend who owns a bar and kitchen in Ambleside, and so that's where we're heading. And along the way, I have a good deal that I would like to talk to you about today. It's all very topical. Recently resurfaced this road, and there's still quite a lot of gravel all over it, so taking it easy for the moment. So yes, we're now getting very excited about the forthcoming holiday. It begins in 2 Saturdays time. Or is it 3? No, 3 Saturdays time. The 20th of July is when we leave Cumbria, head for Birmingham for the Steve Gibbons Band concert, and then down on the Sunday to Folkestone to get the Channel Tunnel over to Calais, and then we're going to find somewhere to camp in the camper van on the Sunday night. And then on the Monday we're heading off across the top end of France, probably taking a bit of Luxembourg as well. Anyway, more of that later. So back to the topical stuff. This is the Mighty Guru Yogurt, partly political broadcast, partly political. And what I want to do today while I'm riding to Ambleside is to talk about the forthcoming general election happening tomorrow. You'll all know about this unless you've been living under a rock with no Wi-Fi connection. And so here comes your 4 or 5 yearly dose of democracy, as they call it, where you get to choose your next set of leaders. And you have a number of options. The usual mainstream parties, you have this reform bunch of clowns, led by a guy that I wouldn't want to sit and have a pint with. Or you can choose not to vote at all because they all look the bloody same. I mean, how do you make your choice? Well, for me, it's really quite easy. And what it comes down to is none of the above. And so in tomorrow's general election, not to be confused with a genital erection, they're not the same thing at all, although it is true to say that there's quite a lot of dicks standing tomorrow. For me, it's very clear. I'm not voting for more capitalism, and all of the political parties standing, with the exception of 2 candidates, none of them anywhere near Cumbria, are standing seeking a mandate to run capitalism for you. Well now, let's have a little chat about what capitalism is. So, capitalism is a system of society in which the means of production and distribution, which is to say the transport systems, the media systems, the offices, the mines, the factories, and indeed all of the raw materials, are owned and controlled by a tiny minority of people. It's roughly 4 or 5%. And the rest of society, owning not very much but their ability to work, is forced by economic necessity to sell its labour power, whether it be for a wage or a salary, to an employer in order to have money to live. Well, that might sound innocuous so far, until you come to realise that what we sell when we go to work, our labour power, has a very special quality, and it can produce more value than its own value. And here's the little trick that goes on. When you work for wages, you get paid considerably less than the value of what you produce. And so your labour is producing a surplus value, which is extracted by the people who own and control the means of production. That's where their profits come from. And you will be aware that over the last 20 years or so, the rich have become noticeably richer, and the poor have become noticeably poorer. You look at the number of food banks that have grown up in the last 20 years. Now, capitalism as a social system, an economic system, is filled with contradictions. For example, we can produce enough to feed, clothe and shelter absolutely everybody on the planet. Several times over, in fact. And yet we don't. Why? Because quite simply, under capitalism, if you don't have the money to pay for something, you are not going to be having it. Unless you steal it. But then you're quite probably going to be going to prison. And that's the way capitalism works. It's based on production for profit and not production for people's needs. And so we have lots and lots of crime, we have lots and lots of people fighting in wars that they didn't start and that they ultimately have no stake in. Rich people start wars, poor people die in them. Back to the general election, it's interesting to note then that all of the major political parties are standing for the continuation of capitalism, which means that they are standing for the continuation of capitalism and its problems. And these are inherent parts of capitalism, incidentally. You cannot have capitalism without wars. You cannot have capitalism without poverty for masses and masses of people. You cannot have capitalism without people starving through lack of food. Well, I tell you what, I'm not voting for that. No way, no how. And irrespective of what each particular political party will say to you and the promises they will make, and you'll have noticed they rarely keep them, there is very little that they can do to alter the way in which capitalism functions. The profit motive is always first and foremost their priority. Well, again, I'm not voting for that. So what am I going to do? Well, I could just not vote, as I've said earlier, and some people just don't. Voter apathy is at an all-time high from what I gather. I can understand why. In 2 days' time, you're going to have a new government and everything's going to be just the same. Meet the new leaders, just like the old leaders. Now, members of our class spent decades struggling and in some cases fighting and paying with their lives to even get the vote. And I do firmly believe that the ballot box is a way in which we can fundamentally transform society in a meaningful way. But only if we don't vote for leaders, only if we don't vote for more capitalism. We can in fact vote for a new form of society. But we won't have that, we can't have that until we have a majority of the working class both understanding what capitalism is and how it can never work in their interests, regardless of how much people try to reform it, and however well-meaning they might be in their attempts to reform it. The only solution is a completely new form of society that has never been tried before, and that's what I'm urging you to consider in this Mighty Guru Yogurt election special. Short break, back in a minute. I can't believe what I've just heard and seen. So this camper van in front of us, very clearly a couple of aging, peace-loving, hippie-type people, have just told me the story of how they were parked up in Hard Knot Pass, not far from here, last evening. Foul night, pissing down with rain, and at about 2 o'clock in the morning they've heard a car revving outside the van. There's then been a loud bang, and a ball bearing came through the side panel of their van. Jumped out of the van to see a car heading off into the distance. Unbelievable. I know there's a bit of hostility to people in camper vans, but come on guys, that's going a bit far. Anyway, back on the road to Coniston, where I need to stop for petrol. So to conclude my little soapbox lecture, yeah, you've got a choice. Vote for more capitalism and nothing is going to change except things are going to get worse, you're going to get poorer, the rich are going to get richer, there'll be more and more wars, possibly even a massive nuclear conflagration. Yep, that's a monster that never went away. Or you can look into the case for an alternative way of living. We can do a lot better than this, guys, a whole lot better. We can live in a world of common ownership, democratic control, where we all get a say in the things that matter to us, and where nobody goes short of food and everybody has a nice place to live, and everybody is able to make their best contribution to society. And then we can live in a truly human system of society that allows us to flourish and be the best we possibly can. Or you can have the continuation of what we got now, which just piles on the misery and makes everything lousy. Don't take my word for anything, check it out for yourselves. I'll put some links to websites you can have a look at in this video. See what you think, tell me what you think. Let's have a discussion. See you in the next video. Spoil your ballot paper. I'm going to be writing global socialism across mine. Have a happy election. See you in the next video.